Well, friends, if you are new with us, you picked a great Sunday to come to First UMC Cocoa Beach because we are starting a new series on practical wisdom. And I'm really happy to see all of you here. There's a lot of folks here who often attend the 11 o'clock service, and I guess you came to 9:30 because you didn't want to have to fight with the traffic with the air show that continues today. I hope that you had an opportunity to see some of that air show, and if not, that you will get a chance to see it today. But we're so glad that you are here, and I'm really excited about this new series that we're beginning today that focuses on practical wisdom. And the messages for the next 6 weeks will be helpful to you even if you are not a Christian and struggle to believe in God. Most of us know that wisdom comes through experience. We have lived long enough to reap the benefits of good decisions and the consequences of bad decisions. In the process, it becomes clear that our decisions are not made in isolation. Rather, everything is connected. The decisions that we make today will affect the quality of our tomorrow. This is a principle that parents and grandparents strive to teach their children, that there are natural consequences for our actions, for good or bad. And these consequences can reverberate for years, possibly even reverberate through the rest of our lives. So, when my son Jackson got in high school, I said to him, "These grades count." Have you ever said that to your kids, your grandkids? These grades count. If so, it's because you know how our decisions are connected. The grades that you make in high school will affect your college prospects, and the college that you attend will affect your job options. And the job that you take will affect your standard of living, and your standard of living will determine where you live. And if you are still living with me at 30, I'm not going to be happy. So your grades ultimately determine my happiness. You better study. You see how it all works. And it's not just connected for you. Are you awake, church? Because your decisions today also affect the future of the people that you love. When we make a bad choice, eventually it causes pain for the people around us. Take addiction, for example. If you are active in an addiction, every time you choose to drink or use or act out, it not only further enslaves you to the compulsive behavior, but it also hurts the people around you, creating inner turmoil with feelings like fear, anxiety, helplessness, sadness, and depression. Has anybody loved an addict? Just raise your hand this morning if you've loved an addict and you felt this pain. This is especially true for your children, from whom you can never really hide your addiction. Addiction can also have huge financial consequences for others. Some families almost go bankrupt trying to help their addicted loved one, or they suffer as someone comes back to steal from them, to pawn those items to buy more drugs. So when an addict says, "I'm only hurting myself," we know that that's a lie, no matter how much they want it to be true. And the same principle applies when we make good decisions. There's a cascading effect. Good decisions not only help us to be more joyful and content, but they also bless the people around us. So consider the fact that we all live in a complex network of relationships. So when we make a good decision, just kind of as a result of that, it will improve our relationships. And most of us know that our happiness tends to track with the relative health of our most important relationships. So if there are significant problems in a relationship with someone that you value, you're not happy. You suffer. So working under the assumption of this principle of interconnectedness, I will be sharing some practical wisdom over the next 6 weeks. And I want to say that this wisdom is not original to me, but is something that has been learned through communal experience and passed down from one generation to another for centuries. And since these messages will be beneficial whether you are a religious person or not, I hope that you will make it a priority to attend in person every Sunday if you are able. And if not, I hope that you will watch all of the messages online. The wisdom that I'm going to be sharing will come in the form of advice. I will not be offering ethical imperatives or a bunch of religious rules that you must follow under threat of eternal punishment. I'm not saying that moral and spiritual rules are unimportant. I'm just going to take a different approach in this series. The advice I'll share is just like the advice that you would share with a friend or someone that you love. It's not really in the realm of moral or immoral or legal or illegal. It's in the realm of wisdom. So what is wisdom? There are at least 2 things, according to the Bible, that determine whether a person is wise or foolish. And the first is whether a person can take responsibility for their own actions and be accountable. Some people are so defensive that when someone offers constructive criticism, they immediately deflect and blame someone or something else. They're like the child who puts their fingers in their ears and says, "I'm rubber, you're glue. Whatever you say bounces off of me and sticks to you." These people cannot admit when they're wrong. And if they do start to admit it, it's always with 100 qualifications because they don't want to be held accountable. But if you cannot receive feedback and admit when you are wrong, then you cannot grow. There are limitations, attitudes, and patterns of behavior that you are incapable of seeing on your own. And if you can't see it, you can't fix it. And this is why the Bible says that a defensive person who is allergic to feedback and accountability is a fool. The second thing, which is more directly connected to this message series, is whether a person understands the idea that life is connected and that our decisions today affect the quality of our tomorrow. And not just understand this in principle, but fully accept it as a universal truth and live accordingly. Before making an important decision, the wise person plays it forward, considering the various outcomes and how they will affect their future and the future of the people that they love. In contrast, the fool says, "I'm not hurting anybody else, so mind your own business." Or, "I'm only hurting myself." Fools make decisions as if they were isolated and do not consider how the present choices shape future outcomes. So, wise people don't trade what they want most for what they want right now. Are you awake? This is the first piece of advice that I would like to offer in this series. And I want to reword it to make it more concise. Don't trade what you want most for what you want right now. For example, if you have financial goals, don't make financial decisions today that will sabotage those goals and wreck your retirement. Or if you have health goals, don't make decisions today about food and exercise and sleep that will rob you of the benefits of good health tomorrow. Or if you want a good marriage, don't make decisions today that can potentially lead to a divorce tomorrow. You get it, right? The principle applies to every area of life. There is nothing illegal or perhaps even immoral about ignoring this advice, but it is unwise because it can lead to a lot of unnecessary pain down the road. And you know what, friends? There is a lot of pain that we cannot avoid in life. Why do we want to add a bunch of extra pain on top of it if we don't have to? All of us have goals. For example, I want to be a good husband and father. It's one of my main goals in life. I also want to be in good health so that I can do fun things with my grandchildren. Maybe great-grandchildren, who knows? And, of course, I want to be a better surfer. So, when we list out all of our goals, both big and small, and then add them together, what we get is our vision of the good life. Psychologists sometimes call this our big picture goal and explain that our success in achieving the good life has everything to do with achieving our smaller goals along the way. And what determines whether we accomplish our smaller goals are the choices that we make day in and day out. And when we don't know exactly what we should do in any given situation, wisdom can guide our decision making and bring clarity, which is an incredible benefit that wisdom has to offer. In addition, wisdom helps us to set up guardrails in life. The purpose of a guardrail is to keep us at an appropriate distance from danger. Have you ever driven in the mountains on roads without guardrails? It's terrifying. The first time that I went to Jamaica with my family, we rented a large passenger van to get us all from the airport to the house that we had rented for the week. My brother-in-law, Tony, who I think is watching online this morning, volunteered to drive, understanding that people in Jamaica drive on the opposite side of the road, like in England. Because we needed a large passenger van, we could only rent a stick shift, but I'm not sure if Tony realized that the driver's seat and the manual gear shifter was also on the opposite side. So as we got into the van, everyone in our family was already apprehensive. And this apprehension turned to sheer terror as we drove through the steep mountains of Jamaica without guardrails as speeding cars passed us around blind corners. Guardrails keep us at an appropriate distance from danger. They increase our safety and decrease our fear. And just as there are physical guardrails on the road, there are also financial, moral, and relational guardrails that are intended to protect our mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical safety. And in my experience, the greatest regrets often are preceded by a series of unwise decisions. Not one mistake, but a series of unwise decisions that cause us to just blow through the guardrails. Friends, people don't wake up one morning when everything has been going great and say to themselves, I think I'll have an affair today. Lots of small decisions, lots of boundaries have to be crossed. We have to blow through the guardrails before that actually materializes. No one wakes up one day and says, you know what, my life is great, but I think today is the day that I'm going to embezzle some money from my company. No, it's a series of decisions where the person slowly violates trust and gets away with it until they finally blow through the guardrail and make the big life-changing mistake. You get it? Most of our biggest regrets are preceded by a series of unwise decisions. And they're not necessarily illegal. And in some cases, they're not necessarily immoral, but they are unwise. If you are here today and you are making a series of unwise decisions, and you know if you are, you might be the only person that knows. If this is you, I am telling you, you are headed for a relational regret. I promise you, it's coming. And it's important to remember that unwise decisions often don't have immediate consequences. This is what makes it so difficult to act on wisdom. The consequences usually come later, causing great regret. And once you get into the land of regrets, it is very difficult to get back or even to get out. Regrets can haunt us for the rest of our lives. So the purpose of a guardrail is to keep you at a safe distance from regret. And this is one of the most important benefits of wisdom. So inviting wisdom into our decision making, not just is it legal or illegal, is it moral or immoral, but is it wise? By inviting wisdom into our decision making, it helps us to see the danger zones that we often might be blind to, and it empowers us to construct good guardrails. If you don't have good guardrails in your marriage, if you don't have good guardrails in your financial life, in your career, it's something you should think about. So, why are we talking about all this in church? You know, why is Pastor Mark acting like Tony Evans today, right? I'm going to be your life coach. Well, the reason why we're talking about it in church is because Jesus connects his invitation to follow him with wisdom. Wisdom. He didn't primarily invite people to believe in him. Do you know what I'm talking about? There are some traditions that you go to church and the overarching goal of the sermon is to literally scare the hell out of you so that you will say, I believe in Jesus. And I think it's important to believe in Jesus, not in the sense of I accept the idea that he is the Son of God as true, but believe in the sense of trust. I trust Jesus, because trust is what is necessary to do what Jesus really invites you to do, which is not primarily to believe in him, but to follow him. Is anybody awake this morning? And did you know that you cannot fully believe in Jesus? You cannot grow in your trust of Jesus without following him first. It's not believe, then follow. It's have enough trust in Jesus, which is a gift of the Holy Spirit on the front end, to begin following him. And then as you're following him, all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, this stuff is true. And you start believing it and trusting it. But the primary invitation is to follow. To follow him. And the way of life that Jesus makes possible, and make no mistake, Christianity is not a politic. And we all need to hear that this morning, because politics has all but co-opted certain branches of religion and Christianity today. Religion is not a politics. Religion is not a philosophy. It is not an ethical system. Christianity is the invitation to follow Jesus, and it is a new way of life. And if you don't change the way that you're living, it's not going to make much difference in who you are, and the belief, if you can maintain that belief longer than a couple of weeks, is not going to help you very much to become the person that you want to be. It's a way of life. And the way of life that Jesus makes possible is a life that is informed and structured by wisdom so that we can live without regrets. Regrets. And you know that you have regrets when you have a hard time forgiving yourself. A life without regrets. As I mentioned earlier, this should be encouraging to anyone watching online or anyone here today who is not a Christian, who sees themselves as not even particularly religious, because everything in this series is going to be practical and helpful regardless. And because I'm offering advice, you can take it or leave it, and I promise it won't hurt my feelings. However, if you are a follower of Jesus and you want to be, Siri doesn't understand what it means to be a follower of Jesus. I'll have a talk with her later. If you are a follower of Jesus and you want to be like him, it's not optional. Wisdom is essential. It is woven into the very fabric of his life and message. And if you remove wisdom from the message of Jesus, you no longer have gospel and salvation. Here's an example. At the end of the Sermon on the Mount, which is the core of Jesus' message, he says the following, which we read this morning. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man. So why is Jesus talking about wise people? Well, the implication is that Jesus wants us to be wise. Why would he give us teachings that show us how to be wise unless the goal was to help us become wise? Jesus wants us to be wise. Jesus wants us to walk in the ways of wisdom. Then he goes on to teach about the interconnectedness of life by saying, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. Now, this doesn't make sense to builders today, because the last thing that you want is a lot full of rocks. But back then, they didn't have the same tools and resources that we have today. And the smartest thing that a person can do in the region that Jesus was teaching was to build their house on a rock so it would have a foundation that could withstand the shifting of the ground created by flooding. And everyone listening knew what Jesus was saying. Not only that building on the rock was wise, but also really hard, really time-consuming, really expensive. It could be done a lot easier and a lot cheaper. But what would be the cost? Then Jesus says, after you have done the hard, expensive, time-consuming thing of building something of value on the rock, the rain came down. Has the rain ever come down in your life? It's going to come down again. The rain came down. The streams rose. The winds blew on and beat that house, yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. The house didn't fall because the builder was wise. And Jesus says, this is how I want you to live your life. Not the easy way, not cutting corners, not cheap, not on the cheap. I want you to build your life on the rock of wisdom. And I will empower you to do this if you will listen and follow me. The other half of the parable isn't quite so happy. He says, everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. They are fools because they live as if life were not connected. Are you awake, church? They are fools because they build ignoring the fact that today has an impact on tomorrow. I'm going to build my house and pretend like what I do today will not affect my tomorrow. The fool trades what he wants most for what he wants right now, in the moment. And Jesus is inviting us away from this kind of life, from this kind of thinking. Which is interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of people have a view of Christianity in which the preacher gets up and says, you're living your life. If you don't change, you're going to go to hell. You're going to burn forever. And so, we got to stop doing all this stuff. You got to stop drinking and cussing and smoking and dancing and going to our movies and drinking Bud Light or whatever the case might be. Right? You got to stop doing all of these things. And we start to think, well, gosh, Christianity is about not doing a bunch of things. It's taking things away from me. It's making my life boring and miserable and difficult. Maybe that's the cross that I have to carry in order to enter into eternal paradise. But that's not what Jesus came to do. And that whole approach just frustrates me. I think it's not only wrong, I think it's wrong-headed. Right? Jesus says, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. For he came into the world to save the world, not to condemn it. And so this parable teaches us that the way of life that Jesus invites us to receive is not to our detriment, it's for our benefit. It's not to make your life miserable, it's to help free you up from the things that you think make you happy but actually make you miserable so that you can be joyful and content. Jesus taught us to invite us into a better way of life. A life filled with wisdom, guided by wisdom, so that we can have life to the fullest, abundant life. It also teaches us, my friends, that knowing and doing are not the same thing. They have two different outcomes. And the one is often used as an excuse to ignore the other. We usually defend our refusal to do what we know we ought to do by arguing that we already know. Does anybody have kids? You try to remind them that if they continue doing what they're doing, there's going to be natural consequences. And so we say, honey, dad just wants you to, I know. You don't have to tell me. I already know. And this happens in our marriage and in our friendships, and happens with doctors talk to patients and psychologists talk to clients. The assumption is that knowing is enough. Since I know, of course I will do. But this is simply not true. We can know and not do, which is the root of foolishness. And because knowing and doing are different, we not only need to learn the principles of wisdom, but we need to practice them. We must have both if we want to change, grow, and experience the fullness of life. And this is why Jesus desires that we know and do. Because because knowing without doing is equivalent to not knowing at all. Did you hear that? Knowing without doing is equivalent to not knowing at all. In fact, it's worse. The outcomes are the same. As a side note, this is why God didn't send us a letter or a philosophy or another religious system when he was trying to save us. This is why God became flesh and dwelt among us in Christ, to show us how to live, how to do, knowing that applied wisdom is what makes the difference. So I want to end this morning by asking you a question. What do you know that you need to do, but you just aren't doing? People who love you might try to nudge you to do what you say that you want to do, what you know to be right. And your response might be, I know. Why do you always bring that up? I don't want to talk about that. And that's cool if you don't want to talk about the specific issue again, but at least consider the importance of the bigger question. What do you need to do that you are choosing not to do? Because until you do it, you are living as if life were disconnected. And you know better. You teach your kids better. You advise your friends better. You know better. And so Jesus comes along and says, the reason that I came and lived among you is because I want you to see how to apply wisdom in your daily life so that you can realize your potential, experience the fullness of life, and be joyful, content, and healthy. So that when you get to the end of your life, you don't have a boatload of regret. If you are young, you have more time than most of us. And if you know what you need to do, and you are choosing not to do it, then the Bible says, Jesus says, you are like a foolish man who builds his house on the sand, knowing that down the road it's going to be a disaster. Wake up. Another way of getting to the same point is asking, what do you need to stop doing, but you continue to do? What's the relationship that you might need to end? You know, we're starting a new Wednesday night class called Good Boundaries and Goodbyes that will help you to process that question with wisdom. And if that's something you're interested in, you're not telling me, you need to tell me today, because I need to send you some important information via email. But friends, you could come to that class and you can learn all about good boundaries. And if you continue to do the things that you need to stop doing, you're foolish. You've wasted your time. Is there a relationship that needs to end? Is there a relationship that maybe doesn't need to end, but needs to be reconfigured? Maybe it needs to look a little differently than what it looks like now. What habit do you need to give up? Is there an addiction that you need to quit with the help of a good recovery community? The God that loves you says, come on, do it. You'll be glad that you did. So if there is something that you need to do but you aren't doing, I just want to encourage you to start today. One step. Every great journey starts with what? One step. If there is something that you need to stop doing, I want to invite you to surrender it today. You will be glad that you did, because it will be one of many steps that will help you to build your house, your future, on the rock of wisdom. And this, my friends, is the good news of the gospel this morning. Thanks be to God. Hey everyone, this is Pastor Mark, and I want to thank you for listening today. I also want to thank First United Methodist Church of Cocoa Beach, the faith community I am honored to serve and that helps make this ministry possible. If you are being blessed by these messages, I invite you to support the mission of Jesus through the efforts of our church by making a donation. Simply go to our website, www.fumccb.com, and click on the link that says Give. I also hope that you will explore other parts of our website and connect to other ministries like online worship and Bible studies. If you feel more comfortable, you can also mail a donation to the church office at 3300 North Atlantic Avenue, Cocoa Beach, Florida 32931. We sincerely appreciate your support as we try to help people who are struggling and need to hear good news. Again, thanks for tuning in today, and may God bless you.